or as when they sew them and cut them out, sometimes if it gets sewn off grain at all, or the fabric was off grain when they initially did it, over time as you wash it, then the grain will straighten. And so what you'll end up doing when you lay it down is sometimes you'll see a seam from the back wrap to the front and the front wrap to the back. So you'll have this weird diagonal line. So when you are laying down your shirt to begin with, grab it by the underarm because it's right in the middle of the shirt basically, and give it a good shake to let this hang perfectly straight. So don't try to force the side seams to be on the fold, okay? Let them just hang when you're laying it down.
Where do you get
This fabric? You'd have to order special rib knit for it, but you can use the self fabric for it. So I'll show you how to just use the self fabric for the collar, and that'll come into play. But you can see how this shoulder wraps forward a little bit, and this one wraps forward a little bit, but it's further back, okay? So lay it all out, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna find where's the middle of my shirt, down here.
Come on, you got it, Dave. 28, 27.
And then I like to just center that on the grid that's on here. I like to use the grid on this to help me keep everything nice and straight. And then make sure that it's also centered on the top. Okay, so that's good. And then what you're gonna do is do not worry about the sleeves laying flat. They can completely be bunched up, that's fine. What I care more about is this area laying nice and flat at the underarm, okay? I'm not actually going to transfer both sides. I'm only transferring one side. And what you're gonna do is pick the side that you think is prettiest, okay? So in this case, because there will be probably like weird things happening up on the collar and the underarm, so whatever one you think is laying the nicest, go with that side. So I'm gonna go ahead with this side. And I'm just gonna mark, here's my middle, here's my middle. Any line that's straight, you can just make a little tiny mark. If you want to, you can figure out how far this wraps over eventually and make that change, but it'll happen after we rub the entire pattern off. If you don't care about it wrapping forward, then I would just say, don't worry about it. It's not gonna affect the fit at all. The other thing I'm gonna do is mark where seam lines come in. So here's where the collar seam comes in, and here's where the shoulder seam comes in. Here's where the armhole comes out. Because this is knitted in the round, I know that this is gonna be a perfectly straight line. So I just have to mark the top and bottom of it because I'll just use a ruler to complete it. If there's curvature, then go ahead and mark along it. I wouldn't draw the whole thing, I would do kind of a dotted line and kind of connect them with a nice curve later. And then right at the bottom, just go ahead and mark that as well. On men's shirts, this will probably be a straight line. On women's shirt, there might be curvature for it because of the hip, okay? So once I've got those main areas marked out, this is when you get to use your spur. And I've already got this stuff marked out, so the area that I need to make sure is good is right here on the armhole. So I'm going to go ahead and nice and smoothly do that. If you feel a lot of shirts with like t-shirts, because t-shirts are very uniform across the board, the front armhole and the back armhole will frequently be the same. Sometimes they're different. And what I'll do is I can feel in here, and right here is where the armhole is on this particular t-shirt. So this one's actually different from front to back, which is kind of cool. So I'm actually going to, while it's still here, feel where that is, and also transfer the back over, okay? So I'm getting both front and back details from the exact same side of the shirt. Same thing with the collar. Here's the collar. And then there's usually a band right here in the back of the collar. We don't have the machine that does that here because it's like a $10,000 machine. But we can sew it together without that just fine. So go in the middle of that. And this line should all come together at the same point right up there at the shoulder, okay? Once you've done that, you can take the shirt away. We'll worry about the sleeve later. Now what I'm gonna do is this line right down in the middle. I'm gonna draw it so I can see what I'm creasing on.
Is that a designer pencil? Or like a pattern pencil?
I've had this pencil for longer than some of you have been alive.
It looks really nice, like
I got
against
it
the
when I
ruler.
got it when I was 19. So yeah.
Is it like an architect pencil, or is it just like a small pencil?
No, it's just a small pencil. It's Zebra, Japan.
You don't
Not both.
care?
This is my favorite pencil.
You
Hold
like
on.
Zebra? Zebra, the brand, is cheap.
And yet it's lasted longer than you've been alive.
Okay, well maybe it was better back then.
Like,
My Zebra pencils didn't last, and they got stolen.
you know, that's not a brand problem. That's you losing track
See, they're
of
too
them.
nice, David. They're too nice.
They're
Everybody
too
buys
nice.
them.
I don't like that brand. They're too nice. Okay.
I'll edit that part out, it's all good.
You'll let that part no. Make it TikTok. See
Oh,
who's
no,
TikTok. Okay. Now I'm just gonna come back in and make everything look pretty. Where's the sides again? This bottom edge, make sure that it is 90 degrees. So if it's off a little bit as you're drawing it over, you can see like this side might be a little bit higher than this other side. Just make sure that it's 90 degrees right here, which might mean that this fudges a little bit, which is totally normal. I mean, it's an organic shirt. It's kind of swoopy on it, so it's fine if it's a little bit off. Just perfect it. This is when you can use French curves. Sometimes I just like to go in. There's multiple French curves out there, and you can usually tell which one they used to design something.
Pick out your sketchbook right now.
Oh yeah, remember to take your sketchbooks over to Carmen. And I'm gonna make sure that I mark both the front, mark both the front and the back on this. And the back is usually bigger than the front.
Is there any part of the sleeve that should be like kind of straight, or is it all curved?
No. Use this on leather. I mean, unless you want that look. Couple places to make sure. If you can get this bottom arm to be 90 degrees, do. Don't ever let it be acute. It can be obtuse, but not acute, okay? If it's, in fact, many of you will find, especially the more oversized the shirt is, that you'll find that this is more and more and more obtuse. So some of you might not have any curvature here. Some of you might have just a very teeny tiny thing where it's like a massively obtuse angle. That's completely normal depending on the style of the shirt, okay? But none of them here are gonna be acute, because if it does, when it gets sewn together, it creates like a pyramid in your armpit. And we don't want that, okay? We do want this section right here on the front and the back. When you put them together, they should add up to 180. So ideally, this right here is 90 degrees for both the front and the back, okay? If it's not, one's going to be acute and one's going to be obtuse. If one's gonna be obtuse, it's gonna be the back one, why we make you take geometry in high school. This is when it actually matters. The other places that need to be 90 degrees is right here at center front for at least 1/2 inch. And right at center back, probably for a little bit longer than 1/2 inch. And then it's gonna blend in to the neckline. This is another place where if you can get this to be 90 degrees, let it be 90 degrees. Usually the back will probably be a little bit obtuse and the front will probably be a little bit of acute. Especially if the seam allowance wrapped, like that seam line wraps towards the front, you can guarantee this will be acute, probably be obtuse and this one will be acute. But we will make sure everything goes together nicely after, in a little bit.
Which one is which?
So the one that drops down lower is the front.
What about the angle at the high shoulder?
This is acute. This one's obtuse. Because remember, acute
They're
means,
adding
but they add up to 180 degrees. So if you're forgetting what acute and obtuse mean, obtuse means bigger than 90, acute means smaller. If you want a cute way to remember it is, small things are cute. So small angles are a cute thing. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give myself my seam allowance, and I'm gonna give myself 1/4 inch seam allowance everywhere because this entire shirt is going to be sewn on the serger, which only needs 1/4 inch seam allowances. If you want to be like, well, I want to be able to trim stuff off, you can give yourself 3/8 inch seam allowances, but you don't need to, so. And I'm only going to put on seam allowance on the outside area. So this internal line here, that's the front. I'm not putting a seam allowance on it yet. I will, but not yet. Same thing here. This external line here is the back. I'm going to put the seam allowance on it, but the internal line, I'm going to put seam allowance on it, but not yet.
I am enough.
Oh yeah.
On a dog tag.
And on the other side of it, it says PQHMQD, which stands for plus que hier, moins que demain, which means more than yesterday, less than tomorrow. So the idea is I'm better today than I was yesterday, and I'm better tomorrow than I am today, but today I am enough. And I had this before Enough happened, by the way, from Barbie. Just saying. Years before it.
Did Barbie ruin it or something?
Ruin everything.
That's what I said.
I actually didn't mind the movie. I thought it was funny.
I thought it was tasteful.
It's cute.
I don't know.
All right. There it is. So once you have all of this laid out, right now we've got all of the information for the front and all of the information for the back all in one pattern on one side of it, okay? So what I'm gonna do is, while it's nice and flat, if you're gonna use scissors to cut it out, make sure you don't let them shift those two layers together at all. So like pin it together. I don't know how you wanna keep it together. I prefer an X-Acto on this because I can put pressure straight down. So now, when I open it up, this is the exact same shape as this, just in reverse. And all I have to do is cut this apart now.
He's a genius.
What was that?
You had a full pattern.
I have a full pattern, and it's all for the same side of the body. So you cut along that fold. This, because it took that outside edge, is now my back. Because I don't have any of the information on this piece for the front, so I'm just going to transfer over seam allowances. This is on a fold, so I just need 3 little dots. And this is my center back, so there's CB. Before I do anything else, I'll finish that in just a second. I need to add some notches. So 3 inches up. I'm gonna make one at 3 and one at 3 1/4, because a double notch indicates that it's the back. The other thing I'm gonna do while I'm still here is I'm gonna go ahead and measure that back armhole. It's 10 1/8. And I'm gonna measure the back neckline.
Are you making your own sleeves?
Yes.
But you never pattern.
Oh wait, no. I'll snag the sleeves off though. 3 5/8.
Why measure?
Because when you're rubbing stuff off, you still have to make sure they walk together. Not rubbing things out, rubbing things off.
Okay.
Don't let your brain go there.
Don't.
Okay, so now we're back to the front, and I'm going to go back in and fill in my seam allowance on that front neckline. And on the interior armhole. A lot of you will not have a difference between the front and the back on your armhole. And then you cut off the excess that had anything to do with the back. I would go in and erase the little lines in here just so that they're not confusing. This becomes my center front. 3 little dots to indicate grain line. 3 inches up to mark a notch. Measure the armhole. I might actually wait to measure the armhole till the next thing I'm going to look at. That's 10 5/8, so it's actually the same as the back.
So on their side, you had 2 notches on the.
Yep, because
big
double
sleeve.
notch always means back.
Okay.
Always. That's just industry standard.
Is it a 1/4 inch above or below?
It doesn't really matter, as long as it's a double notch. I always put it above so that I know from the bottom it's always 3 inches up to my first notch, regardless of whether it's the front or the back. I'm going to take the shoulders and overlap them so that this grain line, the seam line matches up, and they should be the exact same size because they just got mirrored. But do you see how it blends perfectly across here? That's what you want. So even though this is obtuse and this one's acute, they add up to a perfectly straight line as they go across there. Same thing on the shoulder. This has a little bit of a bump out, which I don't love. If it's a massively out there, then what I would do is I would take this go from the high point here to the high point here and cut off the little pointy part so that it's basically 90 degrees. But I honestly don't mind this. Okay, so the front and the back, other than me putting a label on it, are done. So I'm gonna go ahead and do my label. So DR00, I don't know, 50 today. And then this is just a basic T. I'll do V1 because this is version 1 because I'll do the same thing for the second class. And then this is gonna be, what size is this? I think it's a medium. They put the front. This is piece number 1. And then the same information here because all of this shows up on my what?
Cutter's must.
That's right.
Cutter's must. Cutter's must.
Medium, 1 self, and it's only 1 because it's on a fold. And this is number 2. So those pieces are completely finished. Now I have to grab my sleeve. So to do the sleeve, I'm going to take my paper and I'm just going to fold it right off the get-go. If you don't, a lot of people get turned around on this spot. So I'm going to fold it. If you snagged the left side, use the left sleeve. If you snagged the right side, use the right sleeve. So I'm going to use the right sleeve. And I'm going to find the underarm seam and just pinch at it and let it smooth out until a fold forms at the top of my shirt.
Will you do that one more time?
So I'm going to grab this underarm seam line, smooth it all out until I have a nice straight fold right at the top. I just folded my paper. There's a fold over here. Those go together, okay? So I'm going to match up, sorry, I'm going to just hit you in the face with my t-shirt. I'm going to match up the fold here. And just like on the shirt, where I didn't care about whether the sleeve was all screwed up, I don't care if the shirt's all screwed up right now. What I care about is that the piece I'm snagging is laying perfectly flat, okay? Most of the time, you will see this bell curve or a little bit of an S curve. You want that. If it's a massively oversized shirt, it might just be a long, smooth curve, okay? But you should, anytime there's any fit to the shirt, you will see this slight curve. If it goes down like this and you have a little pucker right there, it's not right. You need to make sure that this gets smoothed up so that you can see that. And then in this case, when I laid it all out nice and flat, it turns out that the front and the back seam actually match up perfectly, okay? Oftentimes in t-shirts, that's the case. In really nice fitted garments, you'll notice on the front and the back of your button down, the front of the sleeve is a different shape than the back of the sleeve. That's because it's more fitted, it looks better, they've taken more time to engineer the pattern. In this case, because it's a t-shirt, it's stretchy fabric, we can frequently make the front the same as the back. That being said, we can always make the front a little bit different than the back, and it'll fit a little bit better, but doesn't really matter when we're snagging something off, because if you like the fit of the tee and they happen to be the exact same shape, then, you know, don't fix what ain't broke. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and use my tracing wheel right along that curve. The bottom of the sleeve, unless it's a cap sleeve and really short, will be straight. Don't be, if you're using a short sleeve shirt and it comes and goes like this, that's completely normal as well. Mostly you'll see that in women's shirts, okay? Because most of the time men's shirts come down far enough on the arm, we don't need to start introducing that curvature. But the shorter the sleeve, the higher it gets up there, the more it'll wrap underneath. Okay, so the bottom's probably going to be straight, and here's a curve, and here's the seam line. All right, once you've done that, we come back in, trying to perfect everything. Using your French curves for these seams is a good idea. I don't have mine on me, but I also trust my hand. If the underarms were obtuse, which mine were, just slightly, you can expect this underarm here to be slightly acute, okay? If this is 90 degrees, that's ideal. 90 degrees is just a very happy number. I recall wearing this shirt and having the sleeve be maybe half an inch too long on my sleeve. I'd prefer to be up a little bit. So I'm actually, use this as an opportunity to change length of sleeve if you want to. So I'm just gonna make it half an inch shorter because I can. I tend to match whatever hem I did over here. So notice the hem here, I didn't mention it at the time, but I don't do a 1/4 inch here because this hem needs to be able to go through the cover stitch machine. So you can match the shirt. So like the shirt I've got on probably has a 5/8 inch, 5/8 inch hem. I would not do less than a half an inch on your hems, okay? Even half an inch sometimes feels a little wimpy to me, so I typically do anywhere from 5/8 to an inch.
That one's
I
an inch.
decided to do an inch on this just because I like heavy hems, because hems that are heavier and thicker, gravity pulls on them more, so they tend to hang better. So I like deep hems. I tend to like to match what hem I have on the shirt to the sleeve. So even if they're different, which I don't think they're not, I tend to like to match them. Notice, I'm not going to fill in this area yet, okay? Please do not just extend this line straight down because it won't work. It'll make your life miserable when you're trying to hem it. But I am gonna go in, and before I do any seam allowances up here, I wanna come back over here and say, okay, that was 10 5/8, that was 10 1/8. So that's 20 3/4. So 20 3/4 divided by 2,
10 and 1 3/8.
10 3/8, which means because this is half my sleeve, this should measure 10 3/8. Should. If I was super accurate in my snagging of the pattern, which I'm not always, it's off by a 1/16 of an inch. Can't believe that.
Gonna have to retake 143.
This is your time to adjust that. So just go in, and if it needs to get a little bit bigger, make it a little bit bigger. If it needs to be a little bit smaller, you can. Note though, if it is like a 1/4 of an inch bigger, I'd leave it, okay? Sleeve caps can be bigger than the armhole. They should never be smaller, okay? If they're, and in fact, in woven fabrics, usually they are bigger. Usually we're about, on like, and the taller the sleeve cap, usually the bigger the difference. So the taller the sleeve cap, you're looking at half an inch of ease on the front, half an inch of ease on the back, sometimes 3/4 of an inch of ease on the back. If you've got a 9-inch sleeve cap, because you've got a really fitted suit jacket, you could see like an inch difference bigger on both sides because we're easing it in, okay? That's completely normal. So having it slightly bigger, I wouldn't change a thing. Slightly smaller, push it and force it to be bigger. If this one had been a 1/16 of an inch bigger, I wouldn't have even touched this at all. I would have left it completely alone. But now that this is the same size as the opening it's gonna go into, I'm gonna come back in and add my seam allowance. And 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm gonna dead end at the level of the hem, okay? So I still have this space that I haven't done anything yet with, okay? Completely normal. But I am gonna cut the thing out. I'm And when I get to the hem, I'm just gonna give myself a whole bunch of extra paper. And when I open it up, I should have this lovely bell curve. It's actually a really nice sleeve. No wonder I like the fit of this shirt. Here's the thing, if a pattern is pretty, the final thing is usually pretty. Pretty patterns make pretty clothes. It's the nerd in me. And that's okay. Now to finish the final shaping down here, because it's getting narrower and narrower and narrower, if I fold this up and it's getting narrower and narrower and narrower, it's gonna pinch when I'm trying to hem it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold it up the exact amount that I'm going to hem it eventually. And to get the final shape that it needs to be, I'm gonna cut along my sew line. Not my sew line, my cut line. So that when I open it back up, it is now the perfect shape for hemming it. Okay? So it will jut out like that. If your sleeve comes down and it's like perfectly 90 degrees, you don't have to do this step. If you're like, oh, well, it's 90 degrees down there, totally fine. And now I just have to finish everything. What do I need to do to finish it? Details. Here, 050, this is a T, this is a sleeve, this is a medium, this is a cut 2, and this will be piece number 3, because that's 1 and 2. What else do I need? Notches and grain line. Grain line, I'm just gonna stick right down the middle of where that fold was. Notches, this is my right sleeve. That means this side over here is gonna be the front. So 3 inches up, I've got a notch. On the back.
Is this the real way to measure it?
Yes. 3 inches up. 3 1/4, I've got a double notch. And then I'm gonna come over here, and the front is different than the back. The front is 10 5/8. So I'm going to come up here, along here. And put a notch right here. You'll notice it's not right in the middle. That's totally fine. All I'm trying to do is identify where my shoulder seam is. If the front and the back, if I have extra ease on the front versus the back, like when I was measuring it out and it's bigger, I would have done the math to figure out where the midpoint of this needed to be. So I would have been like, let's say it was 1/2 inch bigger total, I would have been like 10 5/8 plus 1/4 inch. And then the back one would have been whatever it was, plus 1/4 inch, so that it put that notch right in the middle. So that I was purposefully splitting up the ease between the front and the back. Oftentimes the back has a different ease than the front. On a t-shirt like this, just make them the same. Cool? This is now done. Cool? Yay! Except for I'm not done yet, because what piece am I missing? Yes. Believe it or not, this is a rectangle.
Just a really long rectangle?
It's just a really long rectangle, okay? I know it looks deceiving, but the actual pattern piece is a nice long rectangle, okay? So I can't just take those measurements that I took and make a rectangle that long, because if I did make it that exact same width, any ideas what the collar would do?
It'd be square.
It stands straight up,
It'd be like
okay?
back.
So it'd be like a mandarin collar is what it would be, which is fine, yeah.
I try to.
To make it a turtleneck, you're still going to go through this process.
Or like a mock neck?
You can do a mock neck, so if you want to make it extra tall, you can. It's going to still be the same process. You're going to want to go through the math, because we want, in that case, depending on how tall you want it to be, you might be like, no, I just want it to go up and just be all scrunchy and everything, in which case you could take those exact measurements and just have it fit perfectly in. I still would probably make it a titch smaller, Because by making a titch smaller, what happens is it forces the fabric to stretch out into the hole, and as it's stretching out into the hole, the top edge lays down against your neck. So if you've ever had t-shirts where the edge gets a little bit rumply over time, it means that they didn't make the initial collar quite small enough to be able to lay down all of the way. But there's kind of a threshold of how small that you can make it without it scrunching the shirt in. And so sometimes the taller the collar you make, the more likely that is to happen. So an inch collar, you're gonna start running into that a lot more, where the edge, the more you wear it, just gets really kind of rumply. So 1/2 inch, 5/8, 3/4 of an inch collars, those are pretty normal, where I can make it smaller and I don't typically have that rumply edge, okay? So this shirt has got, what, 5/8 inch seam? Yeah, oh, no, 3/4. So this is the 3/4 inch collar. That, do you ever, well, you can see, actually.
Number again?
So I'm added the front and the back.
Oh, those numbers that you wrote earlier.
Mhm.
Okay.
Those numbers
Yep.
that I wrote earlier, that was 10 inches, but remember this is only half of my body, so I need to double it, so that's 20 inches around my neck on the pattern. And then I'm gonna figure out how tall I want it to be. If I want to mimic that shirt exactly, then I need to make it 3/4 of an inch wide. But remember, there's a fold on the top edge of my collar. And since there's a fold at the top edge of my collar, that means it needs to go up, and then it needs to go back down, which means I need to add another 3/4 of an inch. That's the width of the collar I need. What else do I need? Seam allowance. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my 1/4 inch seam allowance on one side.
If you wanted to add more earlier for like serging, would you add more on this as well?
All seam allowances should always match.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's two that go together, they should be the exact same size. Okay. And then just choose one side and say, okay, here's my start point with my seam allowance. And then I'm going to take the number that I came up with, which was 20, subtract 2 inches.
6.
18.
So 18 inches. Were you going to finish that sentence, or?
That's how long the ruler is, huh?
Yep.
Perfect.
And then I'm going to add my seam allowance on there, and this is the width of the length of my collar. Okay? And it'll make 2 is a number that just gets thrown at it. Here's the thing. The taller the collar, the shorter, the more you might have to take off. So like with an inch, maybe instead of taking 2 inches off, you take 2.5 inches off. For a shorter, like for a narrower collar, instead of doing 2 inches off, you might take off 1.5 inches, okay? 2 is just a nice, good, even number to throw at it, okay? And as a general rule, what we would do is we would make a t-shirt and we'll do a toile or something like that, which is, you know, just a mock-up. Before I wouldn't take this straight to production. I'd make a mock-up and I'd look and see what's the collar doing, should I make it shorter, should I make it longer, whatever it is, but this is a good jumping off spot. And honestly, will work for the vast majority of the shirts that you guys are making, yeah.
How does it taper in?
The stretch of it, as it stretches out to get sewn in, it naturally just lays down.
I see.
Yeah.
Is this just a cut one?
Yes, it
Okay.
is a cut one. But there's other stuff to think about when we're putting on grain lines.
On this?
Yeah. Because you automatically think, oh, this is the really, really long direction. So this should be the grain line, right?
There you
No.
Center.
Why should it be the other direction?
The center of the shirt is in the middle.
It has nothing to do with that. Because whether I draw the grain line here, or here, or here, it doesn't really matter, because it's the same grain line across the entire thing. So where I draw the grain line does not matter on this. The direction of the grain line matters on this. Think back to when we talked about knits on the very, very first day of class.
You just want it to like.
It stretches
Stretches.
one way and not the other.
It stretches more on cross grain. And we want the stretchiness, okay? So I'm gonna put my grain line this direction because cross grain will now be going this direction. And so it'll add more stretch to it, which is exactly what we want, okay? And then this is just a DR0050. This is a T, this is the collar. This is a medium, this is a cut 1. And then the self, and I'm just gonna do self fabric because I'm not gonna buy extra fabric. Other kinds of fabric. And then this is piece number 4.